How's it going, everybody? This is Eric,
And this is Justin.
and we are the hosts for The Score.
Score.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a delay. Usually that's on time whenever if you've listened to our podcast before, but we are excited and delighted to be able to share with you today. We wanted to have our cameras on, but we had a couple technical difficulties. But you already know our voices if you've listened to our podcast, so we already know how to do this thing.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we want to introduce ourselves to you guys. And so, who are we? We want to give you a more in-depth look at who you're listening to and what we've done. So I am Eric Jimenez. I am the co-host of The Score. I am currently serving as an assistant director of bands at Prairie View A&M University, which is an HBCU just right outside of Houston, Texas. I am also a doctoral student in music education at the University of Houston. On top of that, I have about over 10 years experience in revitalizing and enhancing band and music programs in the Houston Independent School District, which is one of a very large urban context. On top of that, of being a public school teacher, I did a 1 year stint of being an administrator. And so admittedly, I did not like it. And so I came back to the band hall after that. And
You quit.
although people tell me that, that I did well, but, hey, it wasn't for me. I'm a proud husband and a proud daddy of two, as you can see in my picture, and which would relate to what we're talking about today. I am actually a former DJ.
I'm Justin McLean. I'm the other co-host of the Score. Currently, right now, I'm the percussion director and assistant director of bands at Hightower High School and Lake Olympia Middle School, which is in Fort Bend ISD, located in Missouri City, a little ways outside of Houston, Texas. I'm in my master's program working on Master's of Divinity at Reformed Theological Seminary. I have 9 years. This will be my 10th year. This upcoming school year, be what it may be, is going to be my 10th year within the urban context, HISD, now in Fort Bend ISD. I too am a husband, a father of four. My last child, amen. My last child will be here at the end of August. And my introduction to music stems from me being an artist, musician in the church, as a worship leader, producer, and a minister. So yeah,
So some people know this, but some people don't. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that Justin and I felt that we were living a double life. It was pretty much our identity as an educator and music educator, and then our other identity and or other identities that honestly we had some issues or didn't feel the strength of how to bring that into our traditional way of doing music education. Uh, and it kind of went into how we operated. So we maintained those identities outside of our classroom, but yet again, we didn't know how to make that happen.
yeah, that double life. I used to always kind of joke about it in my first few years of teaching. I was like, by day I'm a teacher, by night I'm this budding artist. I'm in the in the studio late. I'm doing gigs throughout the city, and this, that, and the other. And I thought, just because of how music was introduced to me early on in middle school. Uh, Even different from my experience in church, I thought those were two different worlds. And I thought that I'm a musician, I play at church, I do produce the music, arrange the music for worship. I'm in the studio, I'm writing songs, and then I'm also this, music educator. I teach all things music proper in regards to notes, rhythm, intonation, and all of that. And I never really thought to bring those worlds together until maybe halfway through or the start of my second year teaching, where I said, man, what I'm doing is relevant to my students in my classroom. And so I started to bring in, different records I was producing or tracks that I was creating, songs that I had written, songs that I had produced, as well as what I was doing in my local church. I brought that into my classroom. And for me, in my context, in my classroom, for my students, in my village of young musicians, it really helped. It made the classroom more organic, more authentic, and it allowed my students to be who they naturally were, because they were responding to the way that I naturally was, and that there was no difference. It was that I was melding these worlds together, the church and the stage, along with music ed from the Western civilization concept. So yeah.
And so the picture you see of me was back in the day, if you will, at I think I was a sophomore in college at Prairie View. Justin was probably a freshman at the time. We're just a year apart.
Yep.
And I started DJing at the age of 14. And admittedly, I started DJing for the intent to chop and screw music. Now, if you don't know about that, if you listen to our episode, screw music that was coined by DJ Screw here in the city of Houston is pretty much a slow down tempo, and then it has the chop part would have a downbeat and an upbeat present within the same beat, and so you'll have a track A and track B. All that to say, that was my intent of being a DJ. I was fortunate enough that my brother gifted me an entire DJ set at the age of 14, but his requirement was that I make it a business. And so I did. At the age of 14, I'm passing out cars. I created this image, this identity of and it aligned more so towards a hip hop DJ. So through college, I was DJing at clubs. I was DJing. I had this professional DJ setup. I was doing weddings and quinceañeras and proms. So I was DJing, I'd say 3 out of the 4 weekends out of a month. It was a big part of who I was as my identity. But quite honestly, I felt this shame, this fear of not knowing how to tell my professors, who I still revere to this day, that I do this type of art form, that I do this type of thing with music, because we were taught that the classical diaspora was king, and I honestly didn't know how I could complement that. Now, you know, I can reflect back on those times, because I mean, when I was 14, 15, 16-year-old Eric, I'm over here mimicking and mocking these DJs off the radio to try to pick up like a DJ voice. I also can mimic and mock kind of the Spanish locutores that sound like Count Dracula in Spanish. I picked up some of those things. Part of that I can attribute to my art of code switching, but when we got into the classroom, as the picture you can see on the right, that's our last assignment that Justin and I had the benefit and honor of serving together. I was serving as director of bands, while Justin was serving as director of percussion and assistant director of bands. And that's where we were able to kind of, and as we have been since we've known each other, kind of motivate each other, egg each other
Yeah.
on. I mean, I went
Yeah.
to go check him out at South by Southwest when he performed, and likewise, he's always been there for me. So we've been able to do that, but at the same time, now as educators, we reflect on those situations and those lived experiences. And if we get the opportunity, this is kind of what we led to. So ultimately, if you can kind of hear the fact that I might have a voice for radio, or if you can hear some of the things that I say, it's because I genuinely picked that up from my experience and my time DJing.
Yeah. And I think that story within itself kind of helps us go to this next step. It's your brand, right? Whatever you're building, wherever you are in your process of creating and going to go outside of your classroom, you have to think about the brand. All of us right now, we thrive off of brands, right? Whether it's our iPhone, whether it's the Starbucks coffee, whether it's the certain cars we drive or clothes that we wear, it's thriving off of the brand, and that brand fleshes itself out in so many different ways. So the question is, what's the goal? What's the goal of your brand? And then that has to take us to, well, once I figure out that goal, what'll help me is what I'm bringing to the table, and it's those unique traits, right? So it's your voice. What are you voicing? What's unique about your message, or what's unique about the wealth that you could be as a resource to the people you're trying to reach in whatever capacity, right? And once you figure that out, then you have to pour that into the context, right? So for us, me and Eric, our voice was teaching and speaking to the urban music ed environment, the inner city, those that are can be forgotten about at times, and we wanted to use our voice as a resource to those contexts. Now in our minds to begin, we were like, we're missing something. The directors like you, him and I, we felt that they were missing the information to be successful, to be encouraged, to be empowered. And so we felt like if we could build around what we bring to the table, not taking away from anybody else, not knocking anybody else down, but saying, hey, we have a specific message for a specific context. If we can bring this and put a spin on it and really focus it in, we could see some fruit of the labor. And so where it started for us thinking just personal, right? Us sitting on our lunch breaks, us sitting and saying, you know what, like, how can we be of help to the other band director that's in college right now that looks like you and me, that comes from a background like you and me? How can we provide them with the educational aspect that they may miss out in those classes on the college level, or that they're going to miss out on when they first start student teaching, because they may not get that information. Right. So it started on a personal level. We want to reach other people like us. Well, then we said, well, what does it look like to go out towards the school? And then the school moves out to the organization as a whole, whether that's middle school, the high school organization, the collegiate level, and the professional world. And you have to be able to sit down and kind of, even if it's not super concrete, just very taint those ideas out there so you can start to formulate what's going to happen, and realize that as you find out what's missing, right, and you bring that to the table and you figure out, okay, I want to meet this person, I want to reach this school, maybe it's just your school or schools like yours that you'll be in, that you'll be teaching in, then you have to say, there's plenty of space at the table for you. Your brand is able to compete with everybody else. It's not a monolithic thing. It's not a one size fits all. It's everybody has something different. And if you bring it to the table, there will be people that will show up, that will partake, that will support and encourage you to go even further. And you got to think, we just started this last year, right? Like, I know you're probably thinking this information sounds good, but I don't really think that this can happen for me. We thought the same
Right.
thing. We literally sat in our office at the last school that we worked at together and service together. And we were just talking. We were like, man, we should come up with something that we can give and really get these thoughts out into the atmosphere, into the world, so people can hear it. And lo and behold, we just started, man. And you can do it too. Like, you can come up, your brand is already there. It may take some time, or it may take some moments for you to sit there and say, okay, what needs to be here? How do I say this? What's my context? And I think if you are honest and just believing in yourself and just to take it by storm, it can happen. But you got to think about that brand and know that your brand is missing and that it can have space in this content based area.
So that leads us to you identifying what's going to be your audience, who's going to be your audience, who's going to be absorbing this information, and how in regards to your content delivery. I can tell you that within the system that we've created in music education, we at times depend on the person who has earned their stripes, like and rightfully so. Like, if we're going to a professional development to learn how to do something, you want to know that that person did it and has success doing that. That's where some of the imposter syndrome came in for Justin and I, and not knowing, will people value our voice, will people understand where we're coming from, will we be able to help, and that mentality can creep up on you and not allow you to really share and do it organically in the way that we were able to do that. So our audience was that, because we were influenced by several factors, but one was attending conferences consistently. And Justin and I have always been intentional about going to clinics that were specifically, catered to our context, and that being of an urban school teaching environment, Title I, under resourced, etc. All those things that were applicable to us. Even though we would attend some of the more affluent programs, we were optimists and trying to say, okay, how can that apply to my setting? But then in return, when we were going to the ones that were catered to us, we noticed that there was this ongoing message, if you will, of pretty much people complaining and telling others to find another job. And so
Yeah.
we wanted to find an audience that was willing to absorb solution based strategies that could help in the classroom. So for us, we started thinking about, okay, that talks to the person who's in the schools right now, who's working and putting in the work, but they're coming to us, like, they ask questions like, how do I do X, Y, and Z? But then I don't know how to reach my students. How do I'm limited on instruments? How do I increase instrument inventory, etc.? So then that was our main target. It was like, let's go get some teachers, let's talk about things, and let's get in their ears. What we were fortunate enough to do, though, is now be able to target in service undergraduate students. And
Yeah.
so we are thrilled. I mean, we get students hitting us up talking about they're having discussions about our episodes within themselves in their own NAFME chapters and their own student and future music educator chapters. This is exactly what we allowed to happen, but quite honestly, we didn't target those people. And we're just so we grateful and beneficial to that happening from this platform being created. And so, this is speaking to what we did. But admittedly, like, are you trying to build a business outside of your classroom, and rightfully so, because we all know we could use some extra bread and money if we are educators. And so if you're looking to build an online, business through this option of doing that, so this could serve as recruitment twofold. For example, Justin and I use social media and using our brand of our classrooms. We actually would brand every single one of our bands. Hence why you saw that T-shirt at the last assignment we worked at Heights High School. It was something about that, my experience of getting, I'm gonna just be real, some cheesy shirts that I used to wear back in high school that I would take off after a pep rally because I just didn't want to be seen in them. That when I became an educator, I said, man, I'm gonna get my students really cool shirts, because on top of that, they would go and brand my organization, brand my music program within the halls, within the community. And then on top of that, we would use that brand into social media. Are honestly, if you're representing and extending your brand outside of the classroom, even if specific for your classroom, it might be in recruitment. It might be able to reach students through social media that you didn't get a chance to speak to at the recruitment fair or at orientation and what have you. We've had quite a bit of success. Then on top of that, you could be seeking potential clients. So this could be, how do I get more clients? And so Justin and I have been guests on a couple podcasts recently, and we are more than happy to return the favor when we have guests as well. And so with
Yeah.
that being said, this allows for even more listeners because they have a following and we have a following. And then indirectly, now they've become listeners as well of our podcast. So ultimately now what we've kind of catered our podcast is for all stakeholders. Parents are
Yeah.
involved in our podcast too. They're listening. We have former band parents that are consistent listeners, but ultimately this has become a podcast for all. We have music education practitioners, researchers, higher ed to the elementary level, community, and etc. We've been able to create this conversation that allows for everybody to be involved and included in this. So what I want you to think about while you're doing this is to really reflect, okay, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to reach? But at the same time, I don't want you to set limits that will prohibit you from things that have happened for us, like serving undergraduate students. One
Yeah.
of our colleagues uses our episodes to even play to his students at the high school level to present sometimes a representation model that might not be accessible in person. We use video. Why couldn't it be to hear, like, for example, my colleague, the associate director of bands at Prairie View, Brandon Hopkins, when we interviewed him and students hear his story and hear themselves and what they hear from him.
So your voice and identity. I think we got to pause right here because I want everybody that's attending this right now to really take hold of this and understand that what you're building and what you're trying to go beyond your classroom with involves you, the person, right? It is not that you are creating something totally different. No, what you're doing is creating or using a platform so that your voice can go further. Hence, your voice, your identity. I think one of the things that me and Eric really do well, and I think it's just who we are. If you've listened to any of our episodes, I'm the the comedian of the group, if you will, right? I'm very joking. I'm trying to create who I am in the classroom, who I've been for hundreds of students over the course of my career, right there in where we record. I don't want to be anybody different. Eric is the very fatherly, stoic, type person. And he's that on the podcast every episode. Are there moments where we switch and I become something else and he becomes something else? By all means, yes. But who we are is who you'll see if you meet us, on the street or at a convention or anything like that. And
Mhm.
so in building this, what we want you to know is that the delivery of your content, I want to encourage you to use your voice. And I know you're thinking, why does he keep saying that? Because what you say, how you say it, and who you're saying it to matters, right? I am an African American male. Eric is a Latino male, and so we are speaking how we are, right? And of course, we want to use proper language and we want to do all of those things. But on your content for your thing, you don't have to code switch, right? You can be who you are. You can use your voice to be effective in bringing the message that you're trying to bring. I always try to remind people that we have certain people that are going to hear from us only, right? And I don't say that to be a bad thing. I'm saying that as we open up people's ears to other voices and other people, they'll be more receptive from somebody like you or the person that you may be doing this with. So I want to encourage you to use your voice, be proud of it, be confident in it, and make that a part of what they get when they tap into your content.
So when we get to that, I know, and I've been present to the fact that I know how to code switch. I can probably credit that to DJing as well and mimicking voices and doing that, but it wasn't really uh, brought to my forefront and made it very clear until I was in graduate school, where some of my colleagues openly told me that they don't have to code switch, and I was dumbfounded by that, just kind of like, whoa, whoa, I literally code switch almost every day in every situation and every type of thing. So back in the day when this was kind of still just a an idea, and when we were working together, I was about to take a trip down to San Luis Potosi, Mexico, where my in-laws live, and we want to make sure that our children still have that connection and be able to visit. So we set up these biannual trips down there. That year we were choosing to drive, so it's going to be quite of a lengthy drive. At that time, I'm gonna be real, I was not listening to the podcast. The only time that I would listen to podcasts was to catch up on my sermon that I might have missed on Sunday.
No
So
judgments, brother. No
yeah,
judgments.
thank you. But Justin was always that person. I mean, since from his first year teaching, working with me, to our last teaching assignment, I would always tap onto him like, hey, who are you listening to? Recommend me some artists. At that time, I was like, hey, I'm about to take a long drive. I don't know what the service is going to be like. Put me on game to some podcasts. And he gave me several, and so one of them was called Pat, and it's called Pass the Mic, and it's hosted by Jamar Tisby and Tyler Burns. If you haven't checked them out, this is a podcast of two scholars, two black men scholars, that talk about the Christian perspective through the black lens. Now, when I was listening to one of the episodes, my wife had fallen asleep. I think I was an hour 20 of driving, and she wakes up, and right in the middle of their conversation, they were talking about how iconic and representative the black barbershop is in black communities. And she kind of woke up and she was like, what are you listening to? And I was like, hey, it's a cool podcast. Now, what I gathered from that, I mean, I resonated with that message so much because I'm hearing that, I'm like, okay, they got the credentials, they're degreed, they're doing the work, they're in service. But what really, really caught my attention was the way they were talking to each other, and it reflected similarly to the way Justin and I would talk in our office. And it's an ongoing joke when he would walk in with some new kicks, and I was like, oh, you just gonna flex on us like that? Okay, all right. And so we would use bro, and but you catch me in front of my teachers, giving a parent conference, or then I'm code switching, I'm using a different vernacular, I'm
Yeah.
using a different delivery method, and it gave me this empowerment, to know that it's okay, to speak the way you speak. And just recently my wife has really acknowledged that. She's like, you know what, I'm really proud of you. I can tell that you've gotten a lot more comfortable with presenting of who you truly are. And so that
Mm.
goes into doubling back into with encouragement, use your voice. So Pastor Mike was definitely somebody, and something in a podcast model that inspired us and continues to inspires us to this day.
Now, in your content delivery, the great thing about where we are in society is we all know, right, that content comes through different streams, whether it's podcasts, blogs, YouTube, Instagram, whatever the case may be, Facebook Lives, all of those types of things, right? And so, in building beyond your classroom, always know that there are many means to get where you're trying to go, right? That you could couple a podcast with a blog, you could do YouTube with podcasts, you could do Instagram with blogs, whatever the case may be. Understand that you have the opportunity to get your content out there and to be just as creative, right? I always consider social media like music. There's always something new coming, right? There's a new sound, there's a new style, a new whatever the case may be. And so be up on how to reach your content or how to reach your context with your content. It may be podcast. For me and Eric, that's just where we are in our lives. That's just what we were doing. And so we figured, hey, there are other people that are like us that have families that are popping things on while they're on their way to work and this, that, and the third. But you may be in a different environment, a different place where you are, and the blogging may work. The Instagram live videos may work. Instagram TV, YouTube shows along with your podcast. So I would encourage you to experiment and figure out what works best for you from the tech age or tech spot, like what can you do well without having too much issues, but also what can you do and what can you use that gets your content out there, that people are engaged with it, they're running across it, and they can see it, and it's readily and accessible for them.
Now to that notion, I want to also add that whatever you choose to do, make sure that you remain consistent with it.
Yeah.
So don't jump on one time to YouTube and do a live session there, and then the next time you jump on Facebook and do it there when people might have gone to YouTube to look for you. You want to remain consistent. On top of that, you can tell that our format, those of you that have listened to us on more than one occasion, you can tell that our format pretty much stays the same. We have a first section, we have in rotation, a second section, and then we end it with some takeaways. People expect that. On top of
Mhm.
that, we people expect consistency in delivery. So if you are committing to every week, make sure that you set up structures to every week. Right now, we're in the summer and we've given us some times where we're making some really huge life changes, both Justin and I, that we've given us our bi-weekly episodes now, but we've been
Yep.
consistent with that. So whatever you choose to do, make sure that it is consistent. Make sure that you choose to do it all the time. For example, you could couple it like the way we do. We release our podcast, but we don't have a YouTube channel. We know we chose not to do that, but we
Yeah.
are sticking with the podcast, but we have a Facebook, Twitter, and an Instagram that all reflects the same information that's shared on all three platforms. So whenever I share those things and Justin shares those things, you can tell we have an image, we have an identity, even visually, on
Yeah.
top of the aesthetic of the voice that we provide. We
Yep.
provide a certain logo, there's a color and an image. So, for example, that right there is when we started off obviously kind of a very organic grassroots approach. We're doing it ourselves. Let's put things out, let's pay for things, and then we were able to develop a logo. So whatever you choose to do, I would encourage you to have some type of logo, some type of color scheme, some type of image that relates to who you are, and be consistent with those. I sat in a CBDNA, the College Band Directors National Association clinic. The University of Michigan band program only uses a certain font and certain colors, and it has to be only that, and that's their marketing strategy. And so if you look at our Instagram, our Twitter, our Facebook, you can see some of those same kind of aspects and features being reflected in the way even we deliver the aesthetics and the visual representation of content episodes, of our logo, of different things. And so we would definitely encourage you to do that. This isn't difficult to do. This is something that you could create on a word processing document. This could be on a PowerPoint. This could be using obviously some more advanced techniques that we'll share throughout the rest of the webinar. But just think, okay, I want this to happen and I'm gonna stick to it and I'm gonna go from there. The minute you start changing it consistently, then it's not going to be as consistent. So we would encourage you to use the same logo, the same colors, and the
Yep.
same image throughout your content delivery.
Yeah, and like you said, just to build on that consistent aspect, what people miss when we say be consistent and don't jump around, I think there's two perspectives to that. One is, how do you prepare to put your product together? That you have to be consistent in. What do I mean by that? Me and Eric are communicating throughout the week about upcoming topics and show ideas, right? And we'll brainstorm apart. We'll come together at the end of the week, and since we've kind of hit this coronavirus, we have been recording at his home and I'm at my home, and through media we're able to get that done. But we've already discussed, hey, we want to talk about this. Hey, you think on this, I'll think on that. A few minutes before we record, we kind of abreast each other of each other's ideas and we go into it. We are consistent with that, so that way when we get to the recording moment, when we get to the cultivating of the content, we're not stuck, and we're not chasing rabbits down a rabbit hole, right? Like if we're not prepared, then we'll just get on the phone and say, or we'll get on the call and we'll be like, well, let's just talk about this. Well, then that takes away from the very product that we've been putting together. So you need to be consistent in how you prepare, which ultimately helps you not jump around and be consistent in what you're giving, right? So we are urban music educator apologists, if you will, right? We are defending why we should be in the world we're in, why you should want to be in it. Here's the things you should be looking for and how to approach your students and all of these different things. You're never going to log on or catch an episode and we're talking about remodeling a house, right, or HGTV or anything like that. As much as we love those things, that's not a part of our
Mhm.
product, so we have to do the hard work, and this is what separates quality from things that may get, referenced or may get listened to every so often. It's the level of consistency that when I clock in, I'm getting this product, I'm getting this content, and it's good every time. And I think if you are doing the hard work of preparing, doing the hard work of releasing, if you release every Wednesday at this time, you release every Wednesday at that time, you will see the fruit of your labor. But sometimes we chase that rabbit because we're looking for the most radical thing to do to create traction, when in actuality, what we've been able to accomplish is just because we've been consistent. It's no, we didn't do anything crazy. We don't have anything else going on. We just drop when we drop. We do this. We make sure to do this, and that's what helps us. So please be consistent and do the hard work.
So to add on to that, if you're into leadership books, as I am, I have seen this word consistently is to be consistent, is whatever you choose to do. For example, the book The One Thing, choose one thing and do one thing very well.
Yeah.
I was introduced on back in high school. I was already self-proclaimed that I didn't like to read. But it was on one day that I was speaking to my father, and he was like, you know what? Here's a book. What I want you to do is read 10 pages per day. If you can read more, I don't. Just do 10 pages. And that year, I put that into practice. Within that one year, I read 14 books, and that's the most I've ever read within a year. And it gave me this model and an example of whatever you choose to do, just be consistent at it. Because for example, we all know how what the recipe is, if you will, to be healthy, and that's to eat well and to exercise. But yet we still find excuses to not do that. So with this, I would encourage you to structure your schedule to make sure that things don't interfere, as Justin said. And if they do, have a contingency plan so you can still
Yeah.
follow that. And in the event that you do have an emergency, be real, be honest, and say, hey, things came up. We're going to have a delayed episode by next week because things do happen. And so I also want to encourage you to humanize yourself in this ability to be able to connect with whoever is going to be your audience. And so this has allowed us to reflect on how we do this. So all these things have inspired even the way we potential guests now, and how we structure those meetings. But from there, it has allowed us the space and the creativity to say, you know what, hey, we did it this way, let's branch off and include this. So the content delivery is important. I want you to think of strategic ways, and on top of that, on ways people receive information. Like Justin said, is it through a phone, is it through a computer, is it through whatever aspect of technology that they might be using? We have to be more aware of some of those things to allow us to get to that point. So resources, one of those things that we get asked from time to time, what are y'all doing, what are y'all using, what's the equipment that you're putting on, what mics are y'all using, all that to say, let me make sure that y'all understand that I want to front load that podcasting itself uh, does not have to be expensive. The more I guess higher quality that you might want to present, especially if it's in a video format, then it's definitely going to require some more gear, some more technology, some different cameras and that sort. But we did a lot of research beforehand. I'm just watching YouTube videos and seeing recommendations and reviews and different things of that nature. And so I would recommend you do the same. If you have an idea saying, I want to do a YouTube video, go and research that. We do the same model within music education. We go find out who's the best at what they do. Let's go either go visit their classroom, let's go sit down with them and have a cup of coffee, let's go pick their brain, or let's go watch them present at a conference, and then figure out what they're doing, and then see how if that works in our context, in my model, and what I'm trying to do. And so Justin and I continue to do that in education. We did that while we were serving in public school. We'd find out, okay, so and so made first an area marching contest. Let's see if we can go visit. Let's go be a fly on the wall. Let's see if we can pick some things up and then make it applicable to your setting. So with that being said, what we started doing is before we even launched anything that we had, we were throwing out ideas. We had like a sit down session, a brainstorm session, and we just brain dumped potential names and different things. And then we settled on the score. And so we were excited about having that. But then the next step was, all right, are the handles available? And not only Twitter, but does Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook all have these available? Because what that will allow you to do is you don't have to. So if you type in @pod the score on Twitter, It's going to pop up on Instagram. And if you put facebook.com/pod the score, it's going to pop up there as well. And so we wanted to keep it consistent. That would allow, even for the marketing aspect, for just to put that one handle. Some people make the mistake, they launch their stuff and then they fail to realize that the handle's already taken somewhere else. So do your research ahead of time. We were lucky enough to land Pod the Score, and we were able to claim it on all social media sites. On top of that, go to a URL hosting site and type it in. See if that URL is available, because you might potentially want to create a website dedicated for your content, for your brand, for your whatever idea you have. Additionally, you want to cross check into the business names. You want to start looking at, do people already operate as this? You know, there's a restaurant here in Houston that I frequent, and I stop by and I see a name change, but everything's still the same. When I asked them, they're like, a business from LA found out about us and they sued us, so we just went ahead and changed the name. You just want to avoid any type of situation like that. So there are some business aspects that uh, are required for you to launch this, but it's okay. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, some of us didn't have this training as in teacher education or music teacher education, but that's okay. This is where Justin and I got some of this training from, me being a DJ, him doing his work as an artist. So it allowed us to complement what we're doing here. When we got kicked off, we used canva.com. We still use it to this day. That's what we use to drop our episode artwork, to do any type of graphic that we share on social media. We use that. We use the free version, even though there's a paid version, which, you know, by all means, go for it. But we use the free version. On top of that, we use a graphic designer. Three Monster Effects. My buddy Victor here in Houston has always done my t-shirt designs and my logo designs for my schools and my band programs. So we tapped him on the shoulder. He helped us out. We were able to create the new logo that you see now as presented for the score and on the bottom of your screen. So we really want to recommend that. We use buzzsprout.com as our podcast host. We pay a monthly service. What we do is upload the episode there, and it disseminates it to all podcasting platforms that they have an association with, which, from my understanding, is pretty much all of them. And additionally, on top of that, you if you could see the mic that I'm using, it's a really nice mic now. But we actually kicked off using the Audio Technica ATR 2100 USB mic, the Blue Yeti. And by the way, we were buying this, this USB mic before we went into this uh, virtual teaching model. So I do know, I think some are on back order, but they're a lot more popular now, given that a lot of people are having to work from home. But if you go and check out some of those reviews, people cannot tell the difference from an expensive condenser mic versus that USB mic. The only downside I can tell you guys from that, and it's really not much of an issue, is you have to just be in close proximity to speaking into the microphone to eliminate any outside noises.
Understanding social media, it's all different across the different mediums, right? What I would say, and what me and Eric did, we did some time researching what works for Instagram or works for Facebook. I mean, down to the T of at what times are most people going to be on to view your their page or their Twitter page or whatever. What are the best days? One of the most active times? And so I think if you do that legwork before, it also helps release some of the anxiety and anxiousness that you get when you put a post out to tell people about your upcoming episode or content, right? And it keeps you from doing the same thing over and over again, right? You're posting on this day and then posting at this time, or you're posting at really odd times where people aren't really engaging. I think that helps a lot to understand the nuances that come with Facebook, that understand the nuances that come with Twitter, understand the nuances that come with Instagram. Knowing that will help your product have a little bit more movement to it, right? It's great to have great content, but you also want to make sure you're being proactive and intentional about how you're using social media. The other thing I would say is you need to use social media. You need to be very active in creating a page, creating a site just for your content and your brand, right? You may have your own individual. Me and Eric both have our own individual Instagrams and Facebooks, but we also have a Facebook, The Score. We also have Pod The Score on Instagram, on Twitter. And so what it does, it provides life for you that you're able to operate in that as well as your own page, and people can connect to that page while they're wanting to get in contact with you, right? And that's going to happen. One of the things that has happened over the course of us launching and doing this is that we've come in contact with so many people because of the interaction with the audience. And so I would tell you, one of the best things that helps our brand and really helped us grow and really get to where we are now is that we interacted with people. If somebody messaged me or messaged Eric or they messaged the score, we got back to them. We replied back, whether it was them tagging us and saying we really enjoyed this, or tagging my name or tagging Eric's name. Hey, I'm sending you a direct message. We really appreciate the support. Keep listening. Hopefully we can connect, whatever the case may be. And what that does is it empowers you on this chain of people, right? So this one person connected with me via Instagram or connected with Eric, and Eric responded, and we both responded. Then they tell the next person about what we're doing, and the next person, and so on. And so it kind of becomes this word of mouth echo chamber kind of grassroots thing that I think because of social media, we get confused that that doesn't still happen today when in actuality it really does. And we can speak
Mhm.
to that kind of grassroots movement that took place because we weren't, like we said earlier, we were interested in Texas, man. Just to be perfectly honest and transparent, we were just trying to reach people in where we are. But here we are, giving a webinar because we interacted with people that want to listen to the content. And because of social media, because of the way media is set up, you can actually have that hand to hand contact, face to face thing without being face to face, right? So I would tell you that level of integrity, respect, and just honor that people give to you, that they don't owe you just because you have content. It's shown with how you interact. It's shown with how you understand the social media that you're using. That people want to hear you, they want to know you, and obviously you need to put up parameters like, let's be safe and things like that. But don't let that stop you from interacting with people that can present other opportunities, can grow your platform to reach other people that need to hear what you're bringing to the table.
And to add on to that, I have to acknowledge the power of social media,
Yeah, man.
and using it's been outstanding. I am still humbled and grateful at the opportunities that Justin and I are getting to be able to share our message and connect, and honestly connect with more people. As Justin said, if if you were sitting at a bus stop waiting for the bus with me and we didn't know each other, we're gonna get to know each other. I'm gonna ask you like, hey, how's it going? We're gonna spark up a conversation. That's just who Justin and I are, and we're extreme extroverts when it comes to that. And so all that to be said, allowing this platform, these apps, to connect us with people that otherwise might have happened at a conference, and it might have, you know what I mean, like we're not even sure, but now this connectivity to say, hey, I really like what you're doing, let me know if you have a chance to sit down and chat. Just received an email yesterday from a gentleman who saw one of my presentations at TMEA, and he thanked me for the podcast that I was doing. And at the presentation, I didn't mention the podcast. I actually failed to mention it. And so from there, he was able to, within my social media presentation, to see, hey, he hosts a podcast as well. Let me listen to it. Now we plan on sitting down one day and talking shop, if you will, to do that. And so once this thing boils over, but it's just been amazing. I just got off of a guest lecture with the Boston Conservatory in Berkeley because of social media. The
Yep.
professor came across our stuff on Instagram, reached out to us. We had a phone call, and we said, hey, come, come and hang out with my students, and I'll be glad to be a guest on your podcast. This is the type of stuff that we love that's happening, and honestly, it happened organically.
Yeah.
Those of you that are in music teacher groups, Justin and I do not post our stuff in there. We allow others to. That's something that we just kind of we dedicated ourselves and said we're not going to go and drop our stuff in these music
Yeah.
teacher groups. Let's just let it happen organically and let's see what comes from
Yep.
it. And luckily, about 6 days ago, we dropped a graphic on our social media websites and asked just what city and state are you listening from? And I'm talking about we were taken aback.
All over the place,
Uh,
man.
I mean, we got South Korea,
Yeah.
Indianapolis, all over Texas, New York, California, Florida. I mean, it was just humbling. We are
Yeah.
grateful that the fact that people are listening. The thing that you can do for us is just share an episode, tag a friend that might be, I know higher education professors are using our podcast as episodes as a resource now. And so, whatever it can be, this is creative scholarship, but that's the way you can help us. If you can tell from our tone, if our message, we are here to serve you. We are here to serve
Yeah.
others. And if our practice in school or has worked for you, then by all means share it with somebody else. Just like pay it forward. And this is what we're here to do. So last but not least, this is going to be our last slide. We want to keep it up, and what we want to do is offer any insight, drop some questions. This will be an opportunity for us to go back and forth on some things that we might be able to go that we might have not mentioned in the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them, and Justin and I can answer them.
Justin and Eric, thank you so much from the CMA Foundation. We are so appreciative of both of you. I'm just going to sit here for a minute and see if we get any questions from our attendees, and then we'll just get them read out loud to y'all.
All righty.
We have a question. How do you juggle the podcast and teaching full time?
Let me add on to that, teaching and I'm getting my doctorate. It's like, and then Justin in graduate school too. And let me add on to that too. Justin just bought a house. I am selling my house next Friday. So we have so much that honestly sometimes we don't share on the podcast.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing about that, and I think Justin will agree with me on this one. Our wives, our family,
Oh yeah.
are in support
Oh yeah.
of what we're doing. And
Yeah.
for example, earlier today, my 2-year-old son is very animated and a very great reflection of me as a child. But I can't present with him in the house, to be honest. Otherwise, he'd be knocking at my door and you'd hear his screams. So I love him, but I'm present to that. So what we do is block time. We set things on the schedule. We put things in the calendar. We make our spouses aware and say, hey, I need your support here, and that. So I can tell you that's been a challenge, but we block time consistently. So for
Yeah.
example, Sunday nights are my post-production nights, whether that means making a graphic on Canva or mixing down the episode, Justin writing some things down in the notes section to share on social media. We block time consistently to do that. In the event that we don't, we do a contingency plan. We reconvene and saying, hey, can you meet at this time? So I think the biggest thing, the other day I was listening to a financial planner, a financial guru, Ramit Sethi, and he was advocating for the fact with Tim Ferriss that if it's not in the calendar, it's not going to happen. And so what we choose to do is to put it in the calendar. And from there, it's easier to say we didn't have time to do that versus not doing it at all and trying to put it in the calendar. You got anything for that, Justin?
Yeah, I would say you got to start the way you want to finish. Like me and Eric started recording, on Sunday nights because we felt like that was just the best time. Like throughout the week with my kids, his kids, our wives, our, parental duties and work duties, it just wouldn't have been smart for us to try to do that. And so Sunday is our time. And we always try to, especially in doing podcasts, we try to record either more than one episode, or if we're not able to record more than one, we've already prepped the idea for next Sunday, right? So we don't leave the recording moment or the atmosphere until we figured out where we're going next Sunday. So that way throughout the week we can be prepared. And so I would say create the schedule that's going to work for you, whether you get a new job or as your brand starts to expand even more. Don't just kind of do it willy-nilly, because we didn't know things would take off like this. If we didn't know that and we were just kind of going for what we knew, I don't think we would be as successful as we are right now. So I would say start with a process of where you're based on in your life, your way of life right now.
And shameless plug, if you're thinking, well, I don't have time outside of teaching, go back to listen to our work-life balance episode and try to work more efficient and effective while you're, dedicating your time and energy to your classroom and your school to allow things to happen for yourself that you might have an interest in as well.
Great, thanks guys. The next question is, how should we advocate for music education in this new era?
Whoa, that's
man,
about
that's
to be here
heavy.
for a couple more hours. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go with this one. Be open to provide, because there's so much that we could do, but be open to provide a culturally relevant and sustaining classroom. um, 30, I said this earlier in my presentation, but 30 to 50% of our behaviors stem from our DNA, while 50 to 70% stem from our environment. What we have control is what the environment that we provide our students in our classroom. That's something
Yeah.
that I really want to advocate for you to understand, that you have that immediate control. If you're thinking, I can't change the world, I can't do it all by myself, you directly have control over your music classroom, and that's the immediate impact that you have. And so I would advocate to say, how can I be more culturally relevant and sustaining of my child's cultures and those of others as well? And if your culture represents something different than the demographic that you're serving, then be open to share that as well, as I've been doing throughout my career, and being very proud to be a Mexican American man and allow my students to see that joy that I have for my heritage.
Yeah. I would piggyback on that and say advocating for it is also knowing uh like what are you bringing to the table that would make someone want to get behind you, right? I think
Mm,
sometimes we kind of want to push models on kids, on communities where I mean you could do that, but you'd be advocating, in the dark because nobody's gonna want to get behind that. So you have to do the hard work of not only what Eric said, but researching and figuring out what you know gives to those kids, what gives those life kid what gives those kids life. But I would also say building relationships wherever you're teaching, right, with the local instrument shop, with the music print shop, with different entities around where you are, so that they can see, oh, there's something product based here, there's something that is helping and thriving with these kids. We want to figure out, me and Eric could talk about how many times people have just been like, hey, how can we help? And it wasn't because we went necessarily seeking for it per se, but we got down and we got busy with just doing the work and creating an environment where kids wanted to be, parents wanted their kids to be, and then those same parents went to their communities, those same parents
mm,
talked to their admin team. And I always say this to teachers and educators: before you go knock on doors, you got to knock down the walls with your kids, because those people will do the work for you. Like, our job
mhm,
is to educate the kids, right? And don't get me wrong, did me and Eric go out and say, hey, we need some instruments, hey, can we get some funding? Yes, we did that. But when we made the kids really push the DNA and the formality of what we were trying to do, man, we had parents doing that for us. We had parents, making meals and doing dinners to sell to make money and things like that. So I would say, man, do the work that's probably a little bit more uncomfortable, which will get other people in your back pocket to help you do the stuff that you really don't care about. Like, we don't really care about fundraising. We just want to make music. You know what I'm saying? So
mhm.
yeah.
What do you Google search to learn about social media trends?
I honestly just put in random words.
Just type
Uh,
it.
like what I think I did was, best time to post on Instagram,
Yeah.
best day, best, I did the same thing for releasing podcast episodes. And so when we were still commuting, a lot of our colleagues were using our podcast as music for or entertainment for their commute. And so 5 a.m. on a Monday to start off their week was a good time to do that. So, be creative and just be, I would also identify like Facebook posting trends. And then I
Right.
did that, and I got with Justin. I was like, hey bro, like we got to drop on this day, we got to post on this day.
Right.
So that's kind of what we did. And it was a very informal practice of just Googling.
Yeah. Same.
Okay. What has been your greatest learning as you launched the podcast?
Mm, greatest learning. I think for me that people really want to know. Um, I think
Right.
sometimes, like, that was the biggest thing for me. And I tell Eric this all the time, like, we got reached out by CMA, all these different entities, and I always pose this question, and it's just me being funny. I'm like, who are we? You know what I'm saying? Like, who are we? Like, we're literally just guys that, just worked hard, just tried to figure it out, tried to make the most of all our resources. Um, and I didn't. It was from a genuine place, and I don't even say this to be very like, oh, he's so humble. No, I'm really just saying, like, we are people that we knew we had a sphere of influence amongst our peers, of people that kind of came from the different, situations that we come from. Um, but the fact that people are really wanting to know, and they want to learn, and they want to listen to voices that may not have been heralded the years before. So it was a big it impacted me in a way that said, this is why we teach. The very things we teach our kids, I'm
Mhm.
experiencing, as a 31, 32-year-old, podcaster, that people are willing to know, people are willing to learn if you have the courage and the faith to just kind of go and do it. And that's what we're trying to get our kids to do, right? Like just to take that step and to perform that etude at region, or to perform that scale playoff in front of their peers for a chair test, or to perform that passage of the music before a major pops festival or concert festival. So that's what it was for me, that people really want to know and they want to learn and they're willing to learn from us. So that's for me.
Ditto. I can't state that enough. We're still humbled at the reception that we're getting, and I think a lot of that had to do with our fear, our hesitance, our
Yeah.
not knowing how well it was going to be received,
Yeah.
and that doubt that we carried. But it's been humbling to just know, it's like, hey man, like we presented earlier, there's space at the table for everybody. And
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
you think it's a table or not, it's, man, come in this room. Let's go. Let's have at it.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the biggest thing that we've learned from this, is the fact that podcast is another way to reach. I'm doing it as an academic, as a presenting creative scholarship in a way that's tangible and accessible to all, instead of having to pay for a subscription to a scholarly journal. This is a way to reach information and make it more digestible and tangible and immediate for our teachers to use in their classrooms.
Yeah.
Hmm. That was a good one. And we have about 2 minutes left, so I think this one is a good one to end on. But do you have any words of wisdom for undergrad music ed students?
Woo.
Man, man, you trying to keep us on for a long time, huh? So my advice would be this: that you would clearly create a vision of what you want to do and who you want to be for your students and your community. And I say that because I think sometimes music schools have now turned into what I call the Henry T. Ford model, right? They're trying to produce the same T model car to go out, as though every context community is the same terrain. And I think we hinder our students, and we actually hinder the uniqueness of who you are in that program, because you're spending 4.5 years trying to attain this utopian image of a director, and you're throwing away the very things that kids need to connect
Mm,
to be better students, right? It's not just this
mhm.
idea that we want to create. Man, I know you want to create that monster band program or that choral program or that orchestra program, and I'm with you. I want you to do it, and I believe you will. But what I'm saying is, in creating that program, it's you, right? When I was at Heights, when me and Eric were at Heights, what we built was literally who we were as people, right? This
Mm.
whole montage of us melding two worlds of the core discipline and the entertainment and pageantry of the HBCU show style and the allegiance to musical excellence. That's just who we were as people. And I don't think, have we not had clear visions of that through our professors, through the school we went through or went to, I don't know if we would have been able to accomplish that. So I would advise all of you, have a clear vision. Like sit down, if that means writing down how many kids you want in your band, what type of leadership you want to build, what kind of stand tunes you play. I mean, I know that seems very juvenile and very like low hanging fruit, but it's that. How do you plan to insert who you are, the nuances of who you are? I love basketball. I'm a big, I love all styles of music. I'm in church, I'm heavily involved in my faith. How did that impact me as a educator? And I don't want you to put that on the back burner, because you those kids are coming in to meet a person. They're not just coming in to meet this person who waves a baton or teaches them how to, you know, play their horn correctly. So that write that vision and know what you want to bring and how do you want to impact those kids, man. That's what it's all about for me.
I wish we could have cued the Hammond organ behind Justin on that one, because Uh, but I'll be brief. Be who you needed when you were younger. I don't know, it's a bit cliche,
Mm, that's
but
good.
it's true. I mean, I was that kid that was overly critical of all the curriculum that would be presented to me in
Yeah.
all content areas. I was that kid in U.S. history asking, "Where's the Latino American history? Why is it only mentioned
Mm,
Cesar Chavez and Lulac?"
mm,
I was that kid. And so I went and given, I'm reaching what would be considered the highest pinnacle of the education attainment. I'm seeking a doctorate. And even then, I'm being critical of the curriculum. So in return, when I become that person that has the ability to shape the curriculum, to impact the student that to be that teacher that I needed when I was younger, I have that ability to reflect that and through my lived experiences.
Yeah.